these are reported and documented sexual misconduct charges and have been confirmed. They have been confirmed as much as they possibly can at this point, since the man in question passed away in 2005, I believe, and worked at the University of Michigan for 36 years, from 1967 to 2003. So most of that time was under the football reign of Bo Schembechler. And that's where it ties into our discussion. So this would be no more important or less important had it affected just the basketball team or just the gymnastics team or whatever. But we would not discuss it here if it did not affect football. That's one of the reasons why when the Ohio State situation came up, I don't believe we had several conversations about it. I didn't post a specific video about it, nor did I address it in a call-in show directly. I was asked about it and I responded. I didn't look into it too far. There was no direct tie that I saw. I didn't see any indirect ties to anyone football related at Ohio State. Now, in that situation, Dr. Strauss impacted about 180 student athletes. It's a large university with 30 or 40 sports programs. I don't know if any of those people were football players. Again, that was brought to light, I believe, 2 years ago in 2019. So it's been a couple of years, and I don't recall any football players in particular. Michigan State, there were accusations brought against both Tom Izzo, the basketball coach, and Mark D'Antonio, the football coach at the time, that they were aware. Nothing was substantiated there. Nothing was confirmed. Those were merely allegations. There are going to be allegations against everyone. There are allegations all over the place on all sorts of people. You can find black marks against anyone or insinuated black marks against anyone. So until something's substantiated there, again, that's a situation that went on for years and years and years and years with Frank Lasser, who was heavily involved in Team USA's gymnastics program, and much of the attention on his transgressions were against U.S. gymnastic Olympians, but also at Michigan State, where he impacted over 300 students. And the Michigan State retribution for that has been something in the $500 million range. The Ohio State retribution, something in the $300 million range, which of course is only money and can never erase what was done to those student athletes. All right, at Michigan, what is disturbing here in relation to football, again, separating the acts themselves versus what we deal with here, which is football, is that based on the reports, based on the conversations, the documented legal conversations that were had with student athletes, is that those student athletes brought to the attention of Bo Schembechler misdeeds, grotesque, disgusting acts against them by, I can't even remember the doctor's name. I just read 3 articles on that. But then again, as I mentioned, I went through Penn State, Michigan State, and Ohio State after that. So that's disturbing. And those reported issues and reported communications from football player to Bo Schembechler happened in, I believe, 1976. There was one in around 1982, 83. There was one a little bit later in his tenure. Then there was one after he was still on campus in the building, athletic director, of course, after he retired as football coach in 1989. And he had, Bo Schembechler, an office at the University of Michigan where he was actively participating and actively involved and actively on campus not necessarily with a role of authority, but until the day he died in 2006. There's two basic motivations why anyone would do right or wrong. Two basic motivations. They could be broken down into hundreds of motivations, but two basic motivations that I see for anyone doing anything right or doing anything wrong. And I think we all, as reasonable people who I hope most of us watching and discussing this topic right now have good intent, at least. We can discuss maybe at some other point, maybe on some other channel, our spiritual state in our hearts not being the best unless we get some help for that. But that we have good intent, meaning we want people to be given their freedom of speech, given their freedom of right to life, liberty, and happiness, the pursuit of happiness, to be able to be treated with respect, given opportunity, all those things, for people to be protected against these kind of violations, all of that. I believe I'm talking to people that are in favor of what, again, reasonable, loving, caring, clear-minded people would believe to be basic rights of humanity. Okay. So back to the two motivations would be, in my mind, for doing right or doing wrong, for doing good or doing evil, would be number one, that it's in your heart. You know, I need to do this for this person because it's for their best. Or I need to report this. I need to stop this. I need to protect this person because it is in their best interest. This is horrific. This is horrible. So I'm doing this because I care for this individual. This is a wrong. So that's one motivation, out of the kindness of your heart, out of knowing right from wrong. The second motivation would just simply be, I don't want to get caught. I don't steal because I don't want to get caught. I don't violate this person because I don't want to get caught. I want to look good. Okay. Regardless of the motivation here, it appears as though, if these reports are correct, and unfortunately, Bo Schembechler passed away 15 years ago, so he has no platform or ability to respond in any way. And it doesn't even sound like that there's anybody on campus who is necessarily affiliated. That I haven't been able to substantiate in reading 3 articles, whether there's anyone left at the University of Michigan who could have known what was going on. I would think 15 years later that there would still be some old timers around to be questioned. The doctor is no longer with us. Schembechler is no longer with us. But the other motivation, again, to do good or to prevent evil or keep yourself from doing evil, the other motivation would be, I just don't want to get caught. I want to keep my position. I want to keep my reputation, whatever. This is where I don't understand the actions or the failure to act in evaluating Bo Schembechler's thought process in this. Let's say he's a horrible person. Let's say he doesn't care. Let's say he doesn't care if his football players are being abused. That, I don't know. I'm not saying that. There's an indication there, but let's say he doesn't care. Does he have that much loyalty to that doctor? Does he not want to bring this to light because he thinks that's going to reflect poorly on him? We have found out, we have discovered in this society, in the United States, this is one positive. I can point on very little positive in the last 20 to 40 years that's happened in our society. Most of it's gone downhill. But this is what I will point out that I believe has been generally a positive, is that when somebody holds themselves or a situation that they're connected to or an organization, corporation, institution accountable that they are employed by, or they call something to light, bring something to light, even if they're connected, even if they had a trace of blame, possibly, that usually people are forgiving and say, okay, you did the right thing. Now let's clean this up. And actually that particular person in the long run is looked upon favorably, is exonerated, or saying, okay, they did the right thing. Regardless of their motivation, the motivation might have been that I want to do the right thing. I want to protect right and wrong here, or just I'm going to look good. I'm going to be the hero. So I think we've seen many cases of that. I cannot put myself in the place of the victim in any of these situations because we've seen it in sports. We've seen it connected to entertainment, Hollywood. We've seen it in the clergy, in the Catholic Church in particular. Victims not coming forward, victims years later coming forward. I wonder about that. I'm not going to be critical. I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to say, why didn't you speak up then? Because I'm not in that situation. And let's also keep in mind, not in this particular case with Michigan, but in a broader scale, that there are false accusations against people, that there are false accusations against people, and there are people in it just to gain some kind of notoriety or money or just to bring somebody down. So what do we, and I'm not talking to anybody in particular here or myself, we're removed from the situation, but in general, meaning we as a society, we as an institution at various schools, what do we do going forward? What do we do to prevent this? Because apparently people at that age, people who feel vulnerable, people who feel disenfranchised, people who feel as though the system is working against them, or the person violating them has so much more power than they do, or they're embarrassed, ashamed that they don't come forward. This seems to be rampant. When does somebody ever come forward immediately? Very rarely. So we've got to protect these people. How do we protect these people? How do we prevent these things from happening? Because what we have here is we have a team physician at the University of Michigan in various roles, but team physician for most of 36 years, violating football players. Football players. We're not talking about 13-year-old gymnasts. Football players. And let me correct this. They did speak up at the time, and then they let it go. That seems to be the common theme here, is that they did speak up initially. Then when Schembechler pushed back to say, deal with it or go to the AD, that's a horrible response from a leader. Go to the AD. No, you are the most powerful person at this institution in this state. He just came to you. So even if you're not a caring individual, which a caring individual, regardless if they were the lowest person on the totem pole, would do something about it, but you being the highest, most respected and regarded person, first of all, is your responsibility, of course. Secondly, you're showing no empathy or care, but to pass it off, that shows an individual who wants to protect themselves if something comes up later, but doesn't want to shake the system, doesn't want to blow things up, doesn't want to expose these disgusting behaviors, and probably knows that that athlete will not go to the AD, or that the AD will turn him down, as apparently happened. And so nothing will come of it. Or if something does come of it, well, the AD failed to act. It is interesting to match up the situation at Michigan versus Ohio State versus Penn State versus Michigan State. You see similarities. You see one similarity, which is obvious. It's the only reason we're discussing it, is that athletes were sexually and physically violated and abused. There are different components to it, though, at each case, in each situation, at each school, that either make it more disturbing or less disturbing, that make the institution more accountable or less. I was looking for the legal term there, and it's escaping me. So with Michigan, it's the football coach at the institution who is the man, the ultimate authority, not technically, but in all practicality, the authority at the institution, if not the entire state, the most powerful, most well-respected, most popular person acting in poor judgment, being an uncaring, being perpetuating a crime. And then you have an athletic director who apparently acted in the same way. I don't know if he's still with us or not. At Penn State, you have an assistant coach who had a lot of power because of his tenure. And with that particular assistant coach, he basically acted in the same way. We're talking about the same violations, the same disgusting actions. And then a number of people who did nothing about it, including, again, the most popular, most respected, the iconic figure, person at that institution in the state, Joe Paterno, not acting as he should have. That involved non-student athletes, though. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong. That involved boys at an organization that Jerry Sandusky worked. He worked and was involved in a nonprofit organization to help boys of a certain age. Michigan State, non-football related, I believe. Well, I shouldn't say that. We had over 300 athletes, but all the specific cases I saw were non-football players. Again, you had that Dr. Lasser, and we went through that situation. Ohio State, 180 impacted. That happened from the early 80s to the mid 90s. There were a lot of attempts to do something about it from various people with some level of power, as I read through that again and refreshed my memory this morning. But it always got stalemated somewhere, and then they finally got rid of him. So they took forever and acted correctly at some point. So they before anything came to public light in a large sense, in a large degree, Ohio State fired Strauss. He committed suicide in 2005. And you would think somebody with those kind of tendencies that committed those kind of awful acts would be pretty disturbed. All right, I'll get to the chat. I'll get to your calls and remind everybody that we can talk college football. We don't have to talk about this, and we don't have to be down in the gutter mentally and emotionally for the rest of the day. In preparing for today's show, I had to move so many things around that took so much more time. And if I don't plug that in, we won't have a show pretty soon. So again, welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We talk college football with you each and every day. I am going to be presenting a channel update here very soon, and a number of changes here at the voice of college football. That should be fun. So be looking forward to that. I am deciding whether to post a video or whether to come on here live and discuss it directly with you. Patreon. We've got 48 strong on Patreon. We should be at 4,000. About 15 or 16 cents a day. We get an exclusive live stream on Saturday. Watch parties during the season. Had a watch party during spring practice. Ohio State, Miami. Also, my predictions exclusively there. You could make a few bucks for entertainment purposes only. But the football season will be upon us soon. Join us on Patreon for 15 cents per day. Mark, check that. That would be inaccurate. I believe it's 16 cents per day. Could it be 17? I'll need to do the math. 17 tops per day. Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. You can find the link in the description section. Patreon. Talk to Ronan. He'll let you know. Join us on Patreon. Amazon. Before I get to calls and before I get to the live chat, you see down at the bottom of the screen there, the ticker that says Shop Amazon. Use the link that we provide. I looked this up yesterday because I was having a conversation with a faithful, very loyal viewer. Thank you so much for the conversation. This particular person, while we were having the conversation, I looked it up and said, do you know how many people shop on Amazon each week? This is not in the world. This is in the United States. This is how many people shop at Amazon every month. 160 million. So that's about half the country. So if half of the people that watch our show here with all of you shop Amazon and would use the link in the description section of the videos, same shopping experience, doesn't cost you a penny, doesn't cost you a dime, costs you absolutely nothing. Just save the link, put it somewhere where you'll be able to remember it and find it. Then my mind would be more at ease about this channel being here a year from now. All right, let's dive into, again, your comments. And the phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. Louis Papp. It was going on before Bo got there, but he was in large part of the problem. But let's not forget, Team down south has similar situation going on as we discussed, Dr. Strauss. Yes. Well, this doctor got there, and I forget his name. I believe if I did the math correctly, he was there 36 years, 2003. He was there in 1967. Bo got there in 1969. He might have gotten there in 1967 and didn't do anything. Regardless, yes. Bo Schembechler didn't hire him. Lewis, the Big Ten really has had a lot of problems with doctors or coaches. Don't forget Michigan State and Penn State, as we discussed. Hey, Kyle. Kyle. So we've got a football channel. Do I have opinions on politics? Do I have opinions on social issues? Yes. I think any of us that have a brain, that care at all, yes, have a lot of opinions on that. I will steer clear of posting anything in particular regarding that because we talk college football here. Sometimes it crosses the line and we got to get into, we had a number of things going on in our country and still do over the last year that spilled into social issues. So we had to discuss those and did. So I'm not going to shy away from them. I'm not going to ignore them if the country's falling apart around me. And I'm not going to be talking about Indiana's defense while there are weightier issues that affect football. But in regards to political stances, I'm not going to post those comments. But Trevor, Michigan State fan. Nasser, what happened at Ohio State, Penn State, they're all disgusting. What the issue is that this has been known since last year and is now finally getting media attention. McD Sports 4, good to see you. Go Terps. Malachi says this is a political topic. Okay. Malachi addressed this off the top. Okay. Penn State happened first, or was reported first, because it both happened, then was reported again first. It dealt with a prominent assistant coach at a major school, major football power. So it is a football discussion because it affects the football program. Okay. Michigan State, I didn't talk about that. At times, people would bring up D'Antonio and some allegations against him, having knowledge of the situation. I didn't look into it. We didn't talk about it. I never saw anything substantial, never saw anything substantiated. We did not talk about the Michigan State situation, not football related. Okay. I brought it up here because it ties into a bigger issue. Okay. Ohio State, not football related. No football coach is connected to it in any way that I have been able to see or have heard anybody talk about. Okay. Doesn't make this the issue any less serious. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the relation to football. So we didn't talk about it. Some people brought it up. I addressed it to a certain extent, but did not look into it, read about it, post videos, talk about it here. Not football related. Michigan comes out yesterday, at least via USA Today. It involves one of the historic coaches in the history of college football, Bo Schembechler. Football related. We're talking about it. Roger, Mark, these are such uncomfortable, delicate, sensitive topics. Times have changed and social media highlights or at least make such said topics come to light just as observation, just an observation. Thank you, Trevor. Robert Anderson. Yes, Dr. Anderson. Michael, how you doing today? Boiler up. I had a request, Michael. I had a request to do a Purdue live stream. We are attempting to put that together. Anyone who would like a live stream for their particular team. Now, this is going to be one time only as it stands right now. And I'll just throw it out there that it's in the works, Michael. Don't get too excited. Don't get too excited. Hang on. It's in the works. And we could have some prominent Purdue people here in the live stream and do a live stream, a one-time deal. I would love to do a weekly Purdue live stream. I would like to do a weekly Oregon live stream, Kansas State live stream. Anybody just has to be supported. Just has to be supported. Has to be financially supported. Okay. Trevor, what is also disturbing is how this was being reported last year right before the pandemic, and the local media just tried to push it under the rug. Thank you, Jordan. I don't believe it to be a conference thing. There is nothing that connects these schools in any such way concerning these incidents as being a conference thing or a regional thing or anything like that. We've had similar situations down at LSU. Based on anything we know right now, Jim Harbaugh has nothing to do with this. That is an unfortunate aspect of this, is that, and we saw this most prominently with the Jerry Sandusky Penn State situation, is that people that work at the university, play at the university, go to school at the university, graduated from the university, they are implicated in some way by certain ignorant people because they simply worked or went to school or graduated from said school. That has nothing to do with them. It's an individual acting on their own, and then people in authority, whether that be one person, 2 people, 10 people in authority, did nothing about it. It's isolated to those individuals. Doesn't make anybody bad or horrible by being connected in some way, again, having played for, graduated from, or going to school or working for Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State.
Good afternoon, Mark. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Wanted to, speak about the subject at hand, and then also, and I'm sure as far as all the listeners and those in the chat, I will complete my all-time teams this month. I will not go into June and the football season all-time teams, but as far as Mark, just need to just address as far as anyone having an issue as far as what is being spoken about. I just want to just state it in this way, and I'm trying to state it as succinctly as well as and be clear. And that is, many times in life when it affects someone else, we're reluctant or just straight don't even care when it affects someone else. But then when trouble comes to our doorstep, then that's when we want to voice a concern or it is important. And the thing that we need to be aware of, we have to look at each of these young men as well as each of these young ladies, these boys as well as these girls as our children. And anyone that we have stewardship of, anyone that whether they're 21 or whether they're 10, when they're placed in our care, they're our responsibility. And that being the case, we need to look at them as in caretakers, as in being good stewards of them, looking out not only for their best interests as far as in the present, but as far as 10, 20, 30 years from now. And just as I state that, Mark, I also need to state this too, is that, and I don't want what I'm about to say to sound like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. And it's just that the one thing that I would like as far as starting yesterday, when it comes to men and women, boys and girls that state as far as they're being wronged, as far as anyone that has been the victim of a crime, because this is not what is being talked about is crime. It's not as far as doing someone wrong, but it's a crime. But just as we persecute in the court of public opinion, as well as in, quote, in the law process, when I state that Mark did me wrong, and it's a lie, just as with that same energy that, and when I say you, I'm not talking about you generally, Mark, but as far as universally, just as we state when someone is guilty of something, we need to have that same energy as far as stating that, hey, the person who, for no other way to say it, lied, the same consequences or the same energy needs to be put into that also.
That's a great point, because I've seen, as you have, it sounds like, tons of examples of, and especially now that we've got social media to deal with and everybody's a critic and everybody's going to jump on any kind of allegation out there. And suddenly if somebody gets accused of something, they're already tried and found guilty and damned to hell, and everybody's jumping on them. And there's been a number of times where that person's been cleared and the forgiveness shown, the correction doesn't come anywhere close to the initial hatred and accusations and criticism and ridicule of that individual. I've seen it a number of times through the mainstream media where they can provide if they get a thread of evidence or something in particular, then they're, I saw something just a few weeks ago, putting all sorts of, shocking, eye-popping, attention-grabbing headlines, accusing someone of something, then it turns out to be false, and then they're airing or placing their correction somewhere in about 10% of the space, somewhere else where nobody sees it, and the damage done to that person is never going to be fixed.
Well, the man that gives college football its voice, I had to chime in with my thoughts on this one. I don't want to disparage, a man that I actually have a lot of respect for. I've heard some comments in the chat, Mark. Do you draw any parallels to this with the Paterno-Sandusky situation, or do you think there are any parallels?
Besides the act itself, parallels would be if there's a head football coach, especially of that stature, who has knowledge or at least is being communicated accusations, that can't confirm it based on the conversations with, let's say in Schembechler's case, players complaining, giving concerns, that's a better way to state it, communicating concerns, and him not acting on it. I draw that comparison and that connection between Michigan and Penn State.
Okay. Now, does this because he was there, because he was there for the 20 years as the coach, and then what was he there, 3 or 4 years as an athletic director?
Yeah, it wasn't a long time.
How long is the age? Yeah.
And then I don't know how active he was. He had a office. A lot is made of having an office on campus until the day he died. And I'm sure that he was shaking a lot of hands and talking to a lot of boosters and doing those sorts of things. I don't know. I'm not going to consider him to be plausible past having an official, active role in the athletic department.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the biggest things, and I kind of remember this being talked about when he retired, that was put out there. Obviously, his success. He did never win a national championship while he was there. Yeah, he had a bunch of good teams. He went to more Rose Bowls than any other Big Ten coach, which, is a great achievement. I believe he went to 10 Rose Bowls, if I'm not mistaken, right, Mark?
Yeah, 2 and 8.
Yeah. As the famous line was at the time, because the Bo Jackson commercials were out there about Bo knows. Well, Bo didn't know roses. So I will mention that to the team up north fans, I'm sure, as they remember. Always seemed to lose every Rose Bowl by a touchdown, by the way. Didn't he, Mark?
Yeah,
They always seem to be close.
pretty much. Yeah, you pretty much covered it. They rarely lost one by more than a touchdown. UCLA beat them by 10, so that's being nitpicky a little bit. But yeah, you pretty much nailed it. Warren Moon, Washington, that game was like 27-20. The 2 USC games right after that were both like 14-10, and the other one was something in that range. Yeah, the earlier they lost to Stanford, his first Rose Bowl, 13-12. They lost
right.
to
that's the closest he went to going undefeated.
Yeah,
I think
actually would have been his second Rose Bowl, but yeah, and then even the last game that he coached was, I can't come up with a score off the top of my head, but he had just beaten USC for his second Rose Bowl win.
Right.
After the 88 season. Then they went back and played USC again, and unfortunately didn't get the send-off that you would think that he would deserve. And they lost by a score that last game. Yep.
Well, he had, pardon me, Mark, he had 2 really good teams his last 2 years. The 88 team only lost by a combined 3 points to the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. Because Miami, and they lost on a field goal to Notre Dame the first game of the year. They almost beat them on a field goal, and then they blew a big lead against Miami in '88. Or they could have won both of those games.
Yeah,
right?
That's a great point. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then '89 he loses because he kicks the ball off to Rocket Ismail when he should go. And then '89 he loses, and then he loses in the Rose Bowl to Robo quarterback Todd Marinovich and Ricky Irvins at a really good USC team.
Yeah. Todd Marinovich.
I still remember him. Yeah. I still remember him running off the field, and the guy from ABC couldn't get him for a comment. Do you remember that?
After his last game?
Yeah. The commentator for ABC at the time.
I don't remember that.
But, yeah, from our perspective as an Ohio State fan, we'll always remember the 10-year war, though. So, it was an incredible time.
Yeah, even into the matchups with Earl Bruce, it was a far cry from what we see now, where we really didn't know who was going to win year to year, even if a certain team was having a better season. And during that time, most of that time, they were typically having they were typically having comparable seasons. There wasn't a whole lot of one showing up 10-0 and the other one's 5-5. They were both good, but not great. They were both fringe top 10 teams a lot during those years.
Right.
After near the end of Woody and then into Earl Bruce. Not talking about Woody in his prime, not talking about, early to mid 70s, but those last couple of Woody teams and then into the Earl Bruce day. Earl Bruce, as you well know, aside from that 79 inaugural season, never came close to a national championship run.
Sure. Well, what was the line, Mark? He was 9-3 Earl there for.
Yeah, he was.
Pretty much.
And he only broke it with a 10-3.
Right.
So it was 9-3 from
87.
Well, he went 9-3 from 80 through 85. So that's 6 consecutive 9-3 seasons. And then you might as well say the next
Right.
season was 9-3 because it was 10-3. So he had 3 losses,
Right.
7 consecutive seasons before his final year.
Right. And they were 6-4-1, I think, his
Yeah.
final year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Right.
they had that run of excruciating losses. That offense was just painful to watch.
Oh, bad. Oh, yeah. Well, it did end well by beating Bo, with them wearing the Earl headband. So, and you know what? Bo was very complimentary. He said that he always hated to lose to Ohio State, but, that was a great win.
Yes. Yeah, he had a lot of
So,
respect for Earl Bruce.
he did. And you know what? I was sad when Bo passed in 06. I think, remember, Mark, it was right before the game happened, too.
Sure.
Didn't that, I thought that added something to it, in 06.
It sure did. Yeah. Lewis Papp is commenting in the section here in the live chat that Bo was the AD from 88 to 90. He did win 2 national championships, but they weren't claimed. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, now, of course, the famous line from Bo was when Steve Fisher took over for Bill Frieder as basketball coach
Right.
before the NCAA tournament. That was in 89. Yeah, that was the 89 run to the national championship. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Glenn Rice and that really good basketball team they had.
Yeah, Glenn Rice and Ramil Robinson.
Yeah, they beat Seton Hall. I remember that great game for the national title in Seattle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was at the King Dome against
Right.
oh shoot, I can't remember the Seton Hall coach. Oh my word, PJ Carlesimo. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
that game went to overtime.
Let me ask you this one thing, Mark. Do you think that Bo, when they had that run where they did not make a Rose Bowl because they couldn't beat Ohio State in the 70s, remember they changed the rule? I think it was in 75, where the Big Ten went to, allowing more than one team to go to a bowl game.
Yeah,
Because,
Michigan was
until 74.
Sure. Yeah, Michigan was the first team out of the Big Ten to go to a bowl game other than the Rose Bowl against Oklahoma after the 75 season.
Right. Yeah, they went 32-1 from 72 to 74, and didn't play in a bowl game. That's unbelievable when you think about it.
The Big Ten, for as much as I love the Big Ten, and I think the approach to what they do from a athletic standpoint in balancing the academics is typically on point. The conference has been a bit archaic and outdated. And I know that at times there's a fine line between preserving history and tradition, and those things are important in collegiate athletics. And we focus on football, of course. So I am all for the tradition and the pageantry and connecting to the past and all that. But there needs to be, some awareness as to what's going on around you and how to stay competitive and be relevant. I think they hurt themselves for quite a long time by not participating in bowl games.
Right.
And they had teams before that, David, as you well know, that should have been playing for national championships or having at least a shot to be considered for a national championship in Rose Bowl games that didn't get the chance because they didn't send teams consecutive years to Rose Bowls. That was ridiculous.
Well, that was the thing about 1969. The worst, his greatest victory, by the way. And he would still say to this day, which started the 10-year war, right, Mark? The 1969 victory.
Yeah.
And Woody said to this day that was his best team. Said it before the game, if I'm not mistaken. And they wouldn't have gone to the Rose Bowl had they won that game because of the no repeat rule. I believe at the time. That was going to be their last game.
I don't know when that
Am I
ended
correct on
because,
that?
yeah, because it was just a few years later that, of course, Ohio State played in 4 consecutive Rose Bowls.